So welcome. Now, if you're concerned with what seems like an epidemic of bullying that we're hearing about all the time in schools, or you're working to create a classroom that's safe and kind and respectful and unleashes learning for every student you work with, this is for you. Now, I'm here with Dana Kerford. She's the founder of URstrong, and we wanted to come together to offer practical, proactive advice that can help you and your entire learning community eliminate bullying before it starts. Plus, the tips and ideas we're going to be talking about can help your students learn how to be respectful, help them to work well together, and help learn how to build community inside your classroom and throughout your school. So I can't wait to get started. So welcome back.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
We were talking earlier, and why I'm really excited about this, I know we're both excited about this, is that when we're in classrooms and schools, we hear about bullying often, and we really want to talk about being proactive so it doesn't even come to the forefront, correct?
Totally.
So what I want to ask you, and I know we're going to talk to each other, but
Yeah.
what should students, parents, families, teachers know about friendship and the literacy around friendship that's a proactive approach, almost a prevention around bullying? So what should we know about friendship?
Yeah, and it's such an important question. It's something that's sometimes overlooked. You know, we just kind of assume that kids are gonna figure out the friendship thing on the playground and in the classrooms, and the reality is they don't. Some kids really need some step-by-step strategies and skills. You know, I'm really not a fan of the term, you must be friends with everyone. The reality is not everyone's good for us. And we see it in our classrooms. You know, some people bring out the best in you and some people bring out the worst. And it's so important for teachers to be mindful of the fact that relationships are at the heart of well-being. And we really know that to be true. So that means we need to be giving our kids practical step-by-step tools to create healthy friendships. And what happens actually is that when they have healthy friendships, when they know who to play with at recess and who to sit beside in the classroom, bullying becomes a thing of the past. There's more harmony in the classroom because they're making better choices about who they're hanging out with.
It's empowering because the students then have a language, a structure, and a skill set to negotiate some of that on their own. And I'm thinking of two researchers I know who talk about bullying. We need to say violence because it's actually violence often. And so when they have that kind of language, they know how to negotiate those spaces so it doesn't lead to that space.
That's right. And sometimes bullying comes from spending time with someone who you shouldn't. Someone who really ultimately brings out the worst in you. You're butting heads. They're not respecting you. You're not respecting them. And it escalates to that next level. And in our program, as we've talked about in the past, we don't use the word bullying actually. With little kids, we talk about mean on purpose behaviors. And we teach kids how to respond to those mean on purpose behaviors because it's so important that they stand up for themselves. So we teach them just very simply a quick comeback. So you say a quick comeback to that person. So if you said something mean on purpose to me, like you said, Dana, you're a loser, something like that, then I might look at you and I would stand tall and I'd say, not cool. And I'd walk away. And then we instruct the kids, of course, to report that to a teacher because a teacher needs to know about that stuff in a class. But what we found is that when kids stand up to that behavior and they say that quick comeback, it's essentially giving that other child a consequence. And the majority of children will respond to that and find a better way because we know all kids, all adults, all people want to be liked and they want to get along. And you know what? Actually, I love that you talk about diversity in Unleashed Learning and the work that you do. And I think it's so important when we think about how do we build respectful communities. So I'd love to hear from you on your from your work and what you teach teachers in the classroom. How do you do that?
Well, sometimes when we're talking about bullying, I mean, one of the things to be thinking about from a prevention or proactive model is bullying sometimes is an umbrella term that takes away to what's really going on. So the question then is it racism? Is it sexism? Is it homophobia? And I heard a researcher say once that really bullying is gender policing in many cases. So it's the most masculine boys and the most feminine girls who are keeping the tribe in place. So what we have to do as educators, and one of our keys, Unleashed Learning is inclusion and also about the students, is we have to have a language and literacy around identities. So as a teacher, I have to be able to see race and gender and sexual orientation. And the language is my students speak, or faith or religion. I have to actually see all of my students. And I know sometimes, we were talking earlier that someone could say, well, I don't see those things. I see everyone the same. But actually that doesn't help the situation. And so part of the work is proactively creating a culture that affirms diversity at a school and a classroom on an ongoing basis. And so often we have the diversity workshop after the event, right? But we need it before, because just like you teach friendship literacy, what we teach and a lot of people teach is, I'd say, an identities literacy. And so that's a place where we're teaching students and teachers and each other how to be with each other. So it doesn't turn into, but if it is, we say bullying, it might just be, not just be, it's racism. And we have to address racism at that school, in the community.
Absolutely.
So that from a prevention model, we have to be looking, I have to look through as a teacher those lenses of identity all the time. And what don't I see? What do I see? And helping each other see it, because I might not see it. And you might say, William, it's actually language that's going on here. And I go, oh, I didn't see that. And how do we create a community that's together in all the diversity that's there? So that's the part of identities that's a proactive approach from a bullying perspective.
I love that. Actually, that aligns so beautifully with what we're teaching with Friendship Fact number 3. Trust and respect are the two most important qualities of a friendship. So with children, we talk about, what is respect? What does that look like? How do you know that someone's respecting you and that you're respecting someone else? So one of the big things we get down to, kind of when we crystallize and boil it down, is that respect is about honoring who that person is, even if you're different. And really, I love that you talk about that. I think we need to highlight our differences and celebrate and honor our differences. I think that's such an important thing to create and build that community of respectful learners who are ready to learn.
And can go out into the world and participate with everybody.
You know what? You talk about, too, lowering the filter. And I love that. And do you think that that's one of the ways that we can lower the filter in our students?
So one of the things that we talk about is the classroom, right? And how to set that classroom effective. It's one of our keys. And we were talking earlier again about things like seating plans and things like the space, the music we use, the whole conditioning of it. So the filter is the guard, and if the guard is too high, I'm not going to learn from you. If it's too low, hey, what's going on? It doesn't matter. But there is a little bit is okay, right? So from a bullying perspective, when we talk about bullying, sometimes what's happening is the guard is up for everybody, and then we're reacting. So how do we create, and that's what we do a lot, if we're going to do prevention, how do we set up a classroom that includes everybody, that creates safety? And a lot of times what happens for teachers is that, and I completely get it, is I've got so much content to get through, I don't have time for that. But the problem is if the guard is up, they're not getting it anyway. So we've got to spend time to build community, create healthy relationships and connections. And the seating plan is a really big part. We spend a lot of time with what that actually looks like. And that connects to the friendship piece I don't ask you about, which I think is, like, I wish I had known this, but you say not everyone needs to be friends with each other. So talk about that from a bullying perspective or prevention perspective for bullying.
To be honest, I feel like that's one of the most dangerous messages that we can give kids, is you must be friends with everyone. That you actually shouldn't be friends with everybody. Not everybody is good for you. Not everyone brings out the best in you. You should instead surround yourself with people who treat you with respect and make you feel good. And I'm sure teachers, you can relate that that's not everyone in the world, right? There are some people who you just clash with. So the idea there is that when kids understand the difference between these healthy and unhealthy friendships, we can then move to a culture of kindness and a school culture of harmony, because kids are making better choices about who they're spending time with. So what we say is, of course, you need to be friendly to everyone, right? Friendly, kind, of course. But you maybe don't play handball at recess with everyone. You maybe don't sit next to everybody during that assembly, because, you know, if you sit next to William, you're going to talk to him. That kind of thing. But just empowering them to make those really smart, healthy decisions. Because the thing that I always think about is, how does that message translate into future relationships? And if we tell kids, you must be friends with everyone, even if they make you feel bad. How does that translate into romantic relationships? That's not the message we want to give kids. So we really want to empower them with making those healthy decisions. And like you say, spending the time to create that culture and that community in your classroom.
It's huge. It's huge.
When kids are making those decisions, really, honestly, bullying is very limited. But the one thing we were talking about, I want to bring up before we wrap up, is this idea of power.
Yeah.
You were saying that there's, people who have power equal. Can you expand on that? Because I think the teachers will love that.
So there's 3 kinds of power to know about. There's power over, power under, and power with. And bullying sometimes is power over. So for example, let's say I'm the only student who has an accent in the classroom.
Right.
So power under is I'm the only one. And so there's power over me. All the materials, all the people I talk to, there's power under. And sometimes if it is disrespectful situation, I'm going to explode from that after a time. So what we say is bullying is someone just responding to power. And so what the work is in our classroom is how do we create power with? And how do we teach each other to create power with? So from all of our identities and backgrounds and experiences, that community is, there are power relationships. If I'm a teacher, I do have power over students. That's the truth. So my work still is to find ways to create power with those students, even though I have power over them. And so part of the place from bullying is a teacher. How do I create a community where there's power with? But how do I teach students? That's those collaboration booster cards we're looking at. Is how do we help students have the language to create power with each other? So that means, for example, they're in a discussion and they go, we haven't heard from somebody. John, I'd love to hear from you. And they start bringing people into the dialogue as well. So that's how you create that kind of connection with each other. And those are some proactive ways to before bullying actually happens.
Yeah, I agree. And honoring those differences. I call it candy. You might call it lollies. When we do that, we're saying to kids that we're different, but the same. And that's okay.
And there's many ways to be in the world.
Many ways to be in the world. I love that you say that.
So we're just about out of time, but I know you've got a couple free resources on the new website. So tell us a couple things we can find for the bullying prevention that you've got.
For sure. So teachers, go to our website. We just launched it recently. Check it out. But there's a kind of resource library there for you. You can go there and actually you can filter by bullying prevention. Tons of lesson plans, videos, activities for you to kind of keep these conversations going in the classroom and lower the filter and build community and all the things.
So to end, as we always do, we've got a question for you. This is such an important topic, so we want to hear from you. We want to know what either you or your learning community are doing to prevent bullying at your school, or what are you doing, or maybe what are you doing to really create community in your classroom where students are learning to be respectful and kind and connected. So drop your comments in the comment section below. Some of the best conversations are in that comment section, so join us there. And Dana, you know how I feel about your work.
Aww,
I know it's so important, and we talk about literacy all the time, and these are literacy discussions, big literacy discussions. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll be popping into the comments section too. So I'll put my 2 cents in there.
Fantastic. And thank you for the work you do for the world. You are changing the students' lives. None of this is about perfection, positive progress, and we are cheering you on. We'll see you next time.